Hi, it's Skiffin Lebates here, and today a video on tokens. And here what I want to talk about is specifically fundamental token types, and then I'm going to express a level of disappointment in where we are with tokens today. So the basic types for tokens, well, they fall into three main categories at the moment. You have fungible tokens, non-fungible tokens, and soulbound tokens. And then within those categories, you can find different use cases for the properties that those tokens have. And then sometimes you see token instantiating contracts out there that do something a little bit clever and a little bit different from your average run-of-the-mill ERC20 or ERC721, or I can't even remember the ERC for soulbound tokens. In fact, I think there's about 6 or 7 competing standards out there at the moment, all covering slightly different areas. But perhaps it's a good idea first to back up and just quickly summarize what those three different token types are. So fungible tokens are tokens where each token is pretty much identical to all the other ones. So they are good for recording value or balances or shares or votes, things where one unit is interchangeable with any other unit. And it's kind of the thing we're most used to when it comes to stuff like money. You know, one £5 note is pretty much the same as another £5 note. And nobody in the chip shop, as long as it's not too damaged, is going to object if you pay with the first £5 note you find in your wallet rather than the second one or the third one. And that's what makes them fungible. Whereas non-fungible tokens are unique, and so they're useful for representing specific unique things. And that's where we saw the initial NFT boom with collectibles, where each NFT pointed to a different image, and so they had their own appearance and character and characteristics and statistics and so on. There's more to NFTs than just collectibles, though. They have all sorts of uses and functionalities. For example, you could use an NFT to represent a transferable software license, say, where you say that here's a piece of software, you have to have a specific NFT to be able to use it. We'll mint one for each user. That will then have a history associated with you, and because it's transferable, that would then allow you to transfer the license onto another address in your wallet, or to lend it to a friend or something like that. So plenty of use cases for NFTs. I know they've been under a bit of a cloud because of the boom and then subsequent bust in the overhyped non-fungible token market, but I assure you, sometime in the not too distant future, they will be back with all sorts of other much more valuable uses. It's just that they will also be much more boring uses, so you probably won't hear as much about them. However, they do have the potential to form a kind of underlying architecture for a lot of valuable business cases and use cases. And then the third one, soulbound tokens. So these are kind of like NFTs, but they're not transferable. And that means that you can use them to represent some kind of attribute or certification or license or something like that that needs to stick with a person. So whereas maybe a software license can be resold and transferred, when it comes to something like a driving license or a pilot's license, you don't want to have a person who's gone through the whole education and learned how to fly an aeroplane to then transfer their pilot's license onto an 18-year-old who doesn't even know how to drive a car. So that's where soulbound tokens are going to be useful in the future, and I do think that eventually they will be used to represent all sorts of things like university qualifications, as I said, driving licenses, piloting licenses, representing that somebody has proved that they have a particular skill, and stuff like that. So I was talking in the beginning about these more interesting alterations to these tokens, specifically when it comes to use cases that have little twist requirement on the sort of bog standard use for these three token types. And in my upcoming book, Smart Contract Innovations, there is a whole chapter called Esoteric Tokens, and I think I look at about 15 different core ideas as to how these fundamental token types can be tweaked and altered to gain all sorts of other interesting properties that make them very useful in specific business cases. So look out for the book, and then you'll learn what those various ideas are, and then we hopefully can have a discussion about some of them as to where you think they're useful and where you think they will have applications. That's it for today's video. I hope you found it interesting, and I'll see you in the next one soon. Bye for now.